he was a really strong and incredible ally in this whole fight against Putin and a fight against the evil dictatorship which Putin represents.
The Times magazine has this morning published the first extracts from Alexei Navalny's forthcoming book, Patriot. The Russian opposition leader died in prison on February the 16th this year, and it's widely believed that he was killed. And many see the hand of Vladimir Putin behind his death. The published extracts are all written in prison during 2021, the early part of which saw Alexei Navalny on hunger strike, protesting being denied urgent medical treatment while in prison. We've voiced up a few extracts from the extracts, this one from April the 2nd, day 2 of that hunger strike.
One terrifically cunning sergeant tried to persuade me to stand in line, get food, sit at the table with it, but then give it to others. Give me a break. It's obvious their strategy will be to try to undermine the hunger strike. That's all they know. I've already twice found candy planted in my coat pockets. The first time it wasn't even me who discovered it, but then, during a search. They started sniggering. "Oh my, Alexei Anatolovich, what's this candy doing here?"
And this is what Navalny wrote 2 days later.
Everything is getting more farcical. I go to the kitchen to get some water and find they have installed an electric cooker. And today's trustee, a prisoner who's been granted special privileges and responsibilities, is standing there looking joyful and frying chicken, which he then shares with the entire unit. I'm glad to say my spirit did not succumb to the fried chicken. After the chicken, they started frying bread, deliberately leaving open the door to the kitchen. Bread is trickier. It's my weakness. The smell of frying rye bread really does attract me. However, I just focused my attention on it and then moved on. Do they think the smell of food is going to make me abandon the hunger strike? On Russia 24, there's a 15-minute report about what a wonderful camp this is. Also that I don't look like someone who's on a hunger strike. Indeed, I regularly go to the shop for food. And, according to other prisoners, I secretly eat cookies. Those scumbags. That last claim appalled even the godforsaken trustees. There is absolutely nobody in this prison who's going to claim that my hunger strike is not 100% real.
And finally, here's an extract from Alexei Navalny's diary on April the 11th, 2021.
Yesterday I was in a great mood and surprised all day at how full of energy I was. I felt great. What a lot I can do without food. Today I feel crushed. We went to the bathhouse. I could hardly tolerate standing under the hot shower. My legs gave way. It's evening now and I have no strength at all. I just want to lie down. And for the first time, I'm feeling emotionally and morally down.
Alexei Navalny's hunger strike ended towards the end of April 2021. He also writes about being categorised as a terrorist, about being spied on by other inmates, and about the reactions of inmates when they realise who he is. You can read all of the extracts in the Times magazine today. But let's get reaction to those from the Putin critic, anti-corruption campaigner, and also Navalny's friend, Bill Browder. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Bill, so you've read the full set of the extracts in the magazine today. What did you make of them?
Well, I guess I should share my first emotion, which is really heartbreak. Alexei was my friend. He was an ally. And he was murdered. And, these are sort of words from the grave. And it's very hard to read, knowing what an incredibly strong, brave, and principled man he was, and the fact that he was fully alive and fully with us when he was writing these things, and now he's dead. And of course, as you get more into the details of these letters from prison in his book from prison, the more you realize what an incredible human being he was, and what a strong potential leader of Russia he would have been if they hadn't killed him. And so as I read them this morning, I really felt a lump in my stomach.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us. I know it must have been a difficult read for you. And we were due to speak to another close friend and colleague as well, but they were so affected by what they read, saying that it brought them back to the very difficult days of February when they couldn't speak, eat or cry for weeks after Navalny's death, and they sent their apologies. When did you last speak to him or have contact with him?
Before he was arrested. So he was arrested I guess in 2020 or so. And since then, he couldn't speak to anybody other than, I guess, his family. And so it's been a long time since I was in contact with him. But he kind of filled up he filled everything up in the world. He made these incredible exposés of Putin's corruption. He wasn't afraid to basically call the regime out for what it is, which is a criminal regime, and he did all that in a way that sort of pretty much made everybody understand what was going on, and he was a really strong and incredible ally in this whole fight against Putin and a fight against the evil dictatorship which Putin represents.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about his strength, and I would say I was particularly struck by not just his courage and his stoicism, but in reading them, also his wit and his wry humour, even in the face of hardship and provocation inside prison. What do they tell us about the man that you knew that we probably, maybe most of us didn't know before?
Well, I mean, that was the thing, was the fact that he was just so unbended from this whole experience. Putin would do every possible terrible thing to him, and he would come out laughing, telling jokes, and showing that that in no way was he going to be broken by this experience. And it wasn't just admirable to watch him in that state of mind, but it also was a inspiration to everybody else, because anybody else in Russia was also in a different way being subjected to pressure and torture by Putin, even just living in Russia. And so he was a symbol to everybody, which is that no matter what they do to me, I'm not going to be broken, and nor should you. And from that, it gave everybody hope and it gave everybody inspiration. And it was terribly scary for Putin to have Alexei Navalny exist because of that. Because if he could disrespect Putin from the most terrible torture in prison, so could the rest of the Russian people. And that was an intolerable situation for Putin.
I mean, when he was jailed in 2021, there were huge protests across Russia. How much support does he have even after death? And how much support do those carrying on his fight have now?
Well, when he died, tens of thousands of people stood in line for his funeral in Moscow, not afraid to have their faces photographed by the secret police operatives who were there. And for every one of those people, there was probably 1,000 other people who were too scared to go out there. And so I believe that Alexei Navalny had very widespread support in Russia, that most people, if there had been a free and fair election, they would have voted for him. He would have won with like 80%, and Putin would have gotten like 3% if there had been a free and fair election. Now, of course, in Russia, you have a situation where there's terrible totalitarian government now, and so nobody can express themselves in any way, shape, or form opposing Putin or supporting any member of the opposition. And so you've got a lot of people that are probably very unhappy in Russia right now with all the dead soldiers, 600,000 dead soldiers, and all the economic pressure and all the sort of fear that goes around that you can't say anything. But everybody is too scared to step out and step up because the best thing that happens is you lose your job. The worst thing that happens is you get killed in prison, and nobody wants that. You have to be a hero just to be a normal person in Russia now.
Yeah. How much do you think the average Russian person knows about some of these things that Navalny writes about, with, again, enormous wit and humour, the sort of the kangaroo courts that he was subjected to, as well as the conditions inside the prison?
Well, Navalny was a very famous individual, and I think his fame probably would have been very much a way for the average Russian person to know what was going on in Russia and below the surface. On one hand, you have people sort of ignoring the fact that there's a police state because it's easier to live a life where you don't have to see that. But on the other hand, you have this very visible, very well-known person who was living in this terrible gulag, this torture prison, and it was hard for people to ignore that. So I'm sure that it's no mystery what was going on with Alexei Navalny, and I'm sure the average Russian person knows very well that he was killed in prison.
He says elsewhere that there are a lot of honest people in Russia, tens of millions, and actually far more than is commonly believed. It's very interesting that while opposing Putin, he never stopped believing in Russia, did he?
No, he didn't, and he had good reason not to stop believing in Russia because, his big thing from the very beginning was that that Russia was a mafia state run by a mafia boss, Vladimir Putin, and that was unfair. That the mafia boss could steal everything from the people, and everyone else had to live in destitute poverty. And as he started to expose that, he started to get a huge amount of sympathy and support from everybody living in Russia, and that became a political platform. And when he and his anti-corruption foundation would publish movies about Putin or the high-level officials around Putin who had yachts and vineyards and villas all over the place and showing their wealth, that really caught on like wildfire. And he had, in some cases, in one particular case about Putin's billion-dollar villa, I think something like 120 million people downloaded the YouTube. And so he knew, and he met these people, and he saw these people, and these people supported him, that there were many, many people that were just sick and tired of what was going on in Russia and just wanted a normal country and wanted an honest country, and that's what he represented.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Bill. We really appreciate you coming on to talk about your friend. And it's a wonderful read. I would encourage everyone to go straight to the Times Magazine or log on to the website of the app and read those extracts for themselves. You can also buy the book. Patriot by Alexei Navalny is published on October the 22nd, and is available to order at timesbookshop.co.uk, where there's also a discount for Times Plus members. And there will be an exclusive interview with Navalny's widow, Yulia, in next Sunday's Times Magazine. That's October the 20th.